Boa tarde a todas e todos. Obrigada pela presença. A gente continua com o nosso seminário Histórias feministas, Mulheres radicais, agora com a segunda parte. A gente ainda vai ter uma terceira parte depois dessa. Então, eu gostaria de chamar aqui e apresentar a Elke Krasny. Elke é professora na Academia de Belas Artes em Viena, na Áustria. Seu trabalho como teórica cultural, pesquisadora urbana e curadora se concentra em arquitetura, urbanismo, política da memória e historiografias feministas em arte e curadoria. Krasny é doutora pela University of Reading, no Reino Unido, e em 2012 foi bolsista visitante no Canadian Centre for Architecture, em Montreal. Seus trabalhos curatoriais incluem Care plus Repair, com Angélica Fitz, em 2017 e 2019, Suzanne Lacey's International Dinner Party in Feminist Curatorial Thought, em 2016, In Reverse the Household, com Regina Bittner, em 2015, e Hands-on Urbanism, The Right to Green, em 2012. Esqueci de me apresentar, eu sou Isabela Rigelli, curadora assistente aqui do museu, e, por favor, gostaria que a Elke Krasny viesse. Obrigada.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming back after lunch. It's not easy to be the first speaker after lunch, but I think you will all feel fortified, and probably you also had some coffee, so the carbohydrates you took in will not weigh you down. I want to thank the museum for inviting me, and I'm very, very honored to be part of the group of people, women, speaking here this day. I also want to thank Isabella and Andre for really preparing this in such a way that one felt welcome months before actually arriving here. And I want to thank the translators who do such an amazing job so that people can follow all kinds of languages today. So I try to understand, there's no laptop, but there's this. Okay. So I will speak not so much about exhibitions today. As we all know, curating is a word that is used to talk about exhibition making, about bringing together non-humans and humans in space, assembling them together, and making it possible for people to see, to share, to observe, and also to talk. But I'm more interested today to talk about gatherings that have to do with conversations, and not so much with objects, but with subjects who share a space in common. And curatorial history writing, including critical feminist histories of curating, has by far privileged the exhibition format. But as I said before, this lecture here focuses on gatherings. So when we look into the dictionary, to gather means to assemble, to collect from different places, but it also means to convene, to cause to come together. And both of these meanings are very political if we look at them closely. So the assembly, of course, is one of the most political gatherings we might know, and to convene very often has to do with things that happen in academia. So we see that both of these things have to do with knowledge production, political knowledge production, but also different forms of epistemologies that come together. And if we understand curating as a form of gathering, of assembling, of convening, then we also understand in theoretical terms that curating is a form of epistemology and can, of course, be a form of feminist epistemology. It can also be a form of political activism, but it can also be a form of social encounter and a form of conversational sociability. And what I would like to add to this is when we look at gatherings, like the gatherings I will share with you today, they also address a very long-standing gender divide that has to do with the history of Western modernity. That there is this divide that we call the private-public axis. And the museum very much falls under what we call public, while the home very much falls under what we call private. And some of the gatherings I'm looking at actually happen in private homes, but are very much of public importance, while some of the gatherings I'm looking at that are more contemporary and move toward our time actually happen in museums, but they turn the museum into what is in today's language called a safe space, or maybe a more private and intimate space. So I'm interested in how there's a shifting of sites along this gendered divide with private and public, with the private very often assigned to what has been feminized, and the public with what has been understood as the territory of men. And in methodological terms, I try to do this today by creating trans-historical constellations. So I move through history, the 20th and 21st century, but I try to create echoes and resonances and show that things have to do with each other very often over very long periods of time. And some of this might be more based in speculative associations, in exploratory lineages. Some of it is maybe more a conventional discursive inquiry, but I think all these forms of knowledge production, speculative associations, exploratory lineages, and discursive inquiries come together so that we can try to understand more about what it means to gather, and to understand that humans don't just gather, that there is a lot of work needed, that humans come together and gather. And the first part of my lecture focuses on women-led saloon culture that was very prominent in the 19th and also beginning of the 20th century. And it probably has to do with the fact that I live in Vienna, capital of Austria, that I became interested in this saloon culture because it was part of the Jewish culture that formed and significantly reshaped the city where I live in the 19th century. I think there's also something like a class bias. So for a very long time in feminist discourse, saloons were not really critically examined because they were a part of the bourgeoisie. And so I think class can also work against the subject being critically examined because it was not a working class phenomenon, the saloon culture. So these saloons were small gatherings, intimate publics in living rooms. Saloon is just another word for living room. And as I have argued elsewhere, we might understand the salonier as like a proto-curator. And what I'm showing you here is a very contemporary image out of a film that Anna Mendelssohn, she is an Austrian Jewish artist who does a lot of performance art, makes theater, but also does films. And she did a saloon talk on the occasion of an exhibition that takes place currently at the Jewish Museum Vienna, or just closed at the Jewish Museum Vienna a month ago. And this exhibition was called The Place to Be, Salons as Spaces of Emancipation. And what she did, and this is in a way also showing that very often artists work with trans-historical constellations, and that art in and of itself is a form of episteme, a form of knowledge production, is that here she uses the interior, the musealized, the interior that became part of a museum of a Jewish salonier in Vienna to stage a saloon conversation today. And here we see the different people she gathered or brought together around the table and engaged them in discussing emancipation and feminism. And I think it's very telling that in the year of 2018, we have returned to discuss emancipation. I haven't heard discussions on emancipation happening so often as I did last year during my coming of age as a curator and growing up to become what I am today. So I think it tells us a lot about our time. What they say here, that feminism is a tool, but also a way to reach emancipation. And then the other discussant says, this is something I would agree with. So now we are moving to the beginning of the 20th century, and more precisely to a home in Paris, Paris 20 Rue Jacob. And the salons that took place here for many decades always happened on Fridays. So I think what's also important to know about salons is that they were regular. They didn't just happen once. They happened every Friday or every Sunday or every Monday. And it also meant that people came together repeatedly. So it's something where you practice being together over time with the same people, but also with different people joining in. And here we are at this address at Natalie Clifford Barney's salon. She had a very long life, 1876 to 1972. An American expat who lived in Paris, born to Jewish American parents in Cleveland. And you're probably all familiar with her as a person, but I brought her in here because I wanted to show that she created not only a space that she called Temple to Friendship, but also what she called an Academy of Women. And this very much attacked the Académie Française, which was founded in 1653 and was considered to be an academy composed of those who don't die, the immortals. And the first immortal accepted by the Academy, the Académie Française, who was a woman, was Ursena in 1980. And of course, this Académie de Femmes was a whole lot earlier and tried to celebrate lesbian and feminist culture and creating a space in the salon, but also through the Academy, for lesbian subjectivities, for intimate encounters, and for performing and producing lesbian culture. So I think it's also very important to understand that the salon was a space of generating production, more than the museum that very often collects things that are already produced elsewhere. The salon is very much a generative space. So now I'm moving to a space that started precisely 20 years later. So 1909 was Rue du Jacob, which we just visited. And now we are in the Paris suburbs at Rue Clamart, number 7. And here the gatherings usually took place on Sundays. And I'm showing you a photograph of one of the 3 sisters who hosted this salon here. And I can only show you one photograph because there are no photographs to be found online of the other 2 sisters. So Paulette Nadal was one of, I think she was the first black woman to study at the Sorbonne. She studied English there. She was from Martinique. And together with her sisters, so altogether she had 6 sisters, but together with 2 other sisters, she hosted this salon that was formative and influential for creating the Negritude movement in Paris. So they created on Sundays a space for the Afro-Martinique diaspora, a space for emancipation, for Black internationalism, for Pan-Africanism, for cultural liberation, and also for women's rights. And what I should have added here, also a space for different languages coming together, because the Harlem Renaissance was very much received in this salon, both physically as people came over from New York, but also as an intellectual transnational process of communication. So now I'm moving to the second part, which my parts roughly correspond with what is called waves in feminism. I'm not entirely happy with this model of writing history in waves, but I'm still using it to structure the presentation here. And we can discuss that later, why it's useful to sometimes use things we are not entirely convinced of. So the 1970s and even a little earlier witnessed a lot of women-led international activism, large-scale gatherings, worldwide publics, and something that we might want to call the activist curator. So the activist as a kind of curator. As we might remember, there was this decade, the United Nations Decade for Women, that happened between 1975 to 1985. So in the year of 1965, that's the year I was born, so that's why I can easily remember, the UN thought it was about time, time had become mature enough to secure human rights also for women. So to include women in what is called human rights. And then it took another 10 years for this United Nations Decade for Women to take off. And the woman who actually organized the first World Conference of the International Women's Year in Mexico City in 1975 was Helvi Sipilä. She was a Finnish diplomat, lawyer, politician, and she kept saying that in 1975, women were discovered. So she always made a reference to 1492, and she said Columbus found the rest of the world, and then women were discovered in 1975. And also this is something we can discuss afterwards. And I would say that a lot of the invisible work that goes into preparing such conferences can actually be compared to the invisible labor that is done by curators before assembling an exhibition, or also gatherings that are more like conversations, symposia, etc. What was said back then was that, and maybe some of it still hold, oh, did I speak enough into the microphone? Okay, I'm sorry. Women make up more than half the world's population, yet perform 2/3 of this work. So that's what they said in 1975, maybe it's still true. They receive 1/10 of its income, and they own less than 1/100th of its property. Increasing global awareness of these and other inequities between the sexes was one of the goals of the United Nations Decade for Women. The decade has caused the invisible majority of humankind. So I think that's a very interesting expression, the invisible majority. The women to be more visible on the global scene. And now I'm moving on to some more grassroots and some more art-based large-scale gatherings that happened in the same decade that the UN dedicated to the rights of women. So one was the International Tribunal on Crimes Against Women that was held in Brussels, March 4th to March 8th in 1974. And it was a grassroots, bottom-up, self-organized gathering of roughly 2,000 participants who spoke out and created evidence and testimony on all kinds of crimes, violent crimes like rape, like femicide, that are committed against women and women's bodies. And the goal of this tribunal was to make public the full range of crimes, both violently brutal and subtly discriminatory, committed against women of all cultures. The International Tribunal on Crime Against Women was a people's tribunal, which took place, as I said before, on March 4th to 8th, 1976 in Brussels. Diana E.H. Russell and Nicole van Denden were the tribunal's main organizers. And again, we could see their work as a kind of curatorial labor. And I'm referencing this tribunal here because artist Susan Lacey, who organized an international dinner party on the occasion of the Judy Chicago dinner party opening at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art on March 14th, 1979, actually used this model of horizontal, feminist, grassroots organizing that the tribunal had used in order to create her international dinner party. So first I'm showing you an image here of the museum installation and performance of this large-scale happening. And I'm sorry about the typo, it should read 1979. This is a tribute to Judy Chicago's dinner party opening, inspired by the activist organizational model of the International Tribunal on Crimes Against Women. And now I'm quoting from Lacey's website. This project was a simultaneous worldwide dinner happening created by Lacey and Priest to publicize networks of personal feminist and women's development organizations around the globe on the eve of Judy Chicago's first dinner party exhibition. The performance was designed as a tribute to Chicago, Lacey's former teacher, to extend the concept of the dinner party globally, engaging women around the world in a simultaneous event honoring accomplished women in their own regions. Telegrams were sent to the museum by over 200 groups. The location of each dinner was marked by Lacey with a red inverted triangle on a 20-foot wide black and white map of the world. So what she did was she reached out to women's groups and then asked them to reach out to other women's groups, and then that spread globally. And all the women were asked to host a dinner, and most of these dinners took place in private homes. And then the women gathering around these 200 different dinner tables wrote telegram messages on feminism or honoring women in their community. And I had the opportunity to work with the archive of this dinner party to read all these messages that actually bring alive a moment, March 14th, 1979, where, for example, women in Edinburgh declare their solidarity with women marching in Tehran. So we see that there is a large-scale transnational solidarity between women around the globe, but when we look closely at the map I showed you before, we also see that it was still a very Western-dominated version of feminism that they were able to reach out to or to reach or to include in this black and white map of the world. And what I found interesting about this work by Susan Lacey is that it actually bridged between the private home, the domestic space of an intimate gathering, and making it public in the museum space. And now I'm moving to the very last part of my presentation, which is women-led community-based activism, small gatherings, intimate publics in museums and art spaces. And what we have here, like we already had with Susan Lacey, is a coming together of the artist, activist, and a lot of curatorial work. I'm not saying that Susan Lacey ever called herself a curator, that's not what I'm saying, but that a lot of the work that is being done resembles or is very much like curatorial work. And I'm showing two more projects. The first one is Black Women Artists for Black Lives Matter at the New Museum in New York City, which was convened by Simone Lee. And here we see Black Women Artists for Black Lives Matter participants arriving at the New Museum on the Lower East Side of Manhattan for a Thursday night's program. And maybe I should tell you a little bit more about the context in which this happened. So Simone Lee is a Chicago-born US-American artist who did a large-scale installation at the New Museum called Waiting Room. And with this work, she honored the death of Esmin Green, who had died in the year of 2008 at Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn. So this immigrant from Jamaica, Esmin Green, was brought or taken to the hospital in a state of what was reported as psychosis and agitation. And 24 hours later, she still hadn't been treated. And one could say that she died waiting. She died waiting for treatment. And this led to the work Waiting Room that was shown at the New Museum and addressed questions of self-care and social care that come forward or that are put forward as radical alternatives if public health care and other types of health care fail and continue to fail and result in what we can call institutional violence, institutional neglect, leading to deathly failures. And this installation included herbalist apothecaries, medicine markets, as one can find them in Durban, South Africa, all kinds of different bodily and spiritual health, and it was very much based also in the histories of Black communities, how they organize around care and how they organize care in very different, also underground ways. And this work included so-called care seminars. Some of them were open to the public at large, but many others were not open to the public at large and created what I said before, something that we might call a safe space within the museum, and also a space that chooses to be separatist, so open only to Black women and to women of color. A strategy of self-segregation, one could say. And it is in this context and with this political spirit that Black women artists for Black Lives Matter came together and formed as an activist entity, an activist body, we could say. And here I'm showing all the names that are listed as being part of Black women artists for Black Lives Matter. We might not be able to read all of them, but I'm just letting it stand for a little bit. And what they did, thanks to the generosity of the museum, is that they were allowed to use the museum space after hours, so after the museum was closed for the public, in order to prepare an event that would be a public event on September 1st, 2016. And I think this is one of the most generous things that a museum can do, so that the curator curatorially steps back and says, I'm not assuming the role of curator, but I hand over the responsibility to a community of more than 100 people. I let them use the infrastructure, so that's also a very important term when we talk about access, support, and gatherings. And then they will decide on their own how they want to use the museum as a public space in preparing for the September 1st event. I think most of this I already spoke about. Oh, what I haven't mentioned yet is that they theoretically base a lot of their work on theorists like Saidiya Hartman, who has worked a lot on the Black Atlantic, on ancestral memory, and on bringing together what she calls critical fabulation and other types of very embodied history writing. And the last work I'm sharing with you is Guess Who's Coming for Dinner Too? It took place at WOW in Amsterdam last year from June to September. And it's a piece by Patricia Karstenhout. She is a Dutch artist of Surinamese descent. As you can see, Guess Who's Coming for Dinner is both a critique, but also an appreciation, an extension, and appropriation of Judy Chicago's dinner party. And I should say that WOW isn't a traditional museum or art space, it's actually a hostel. And this hostel also has rooms for artists who just graduated from art school and don't have a whole lot of money. It also runs a contemporary art space. So it's a very interesting space between domesticity, living, housing, tourism, and a space that is public for contemporary artistic production. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner Too, and I'm now quoting from the website, is a community art project by visual artist and activist Patricia Karstenhout in cooperation with the Amsterdam Grafisch Atelier, so I'm not sure I'm doing justice to the Dutch. Red Gilde Lab, By Brown, and Wow Amsterdam. So she works together with a graphic atelier, with a maker space, and By Brown is actually a fashion designer. And Wow, as I said, is this hostel with an art space. With this project, Carson Hout, who was born in 1966, delivers an artistic critique of Judy Chicago's The Dinner Party 1979, which celebrates strong women, but underrepresents women of color. Inspired by this work, Carson Hout builds an installation consisting of a large triangular dining table full of symbolism, where she honors 36 Black women, heroines of resistance. The exhibition will be opened by a performance on Thursday, June 29th, during which a group of men will perform a haka, a Maori ceremonial war dance in honor of women, while wearing robes specially designed for the exhibition. And Patricia sent the video to me, but it's not a video that can be shown in public, but it's one of the most powerful videos I've seen in a very, very long time. So the men honoring in a ceremonial war dance the women who were previously underrepresented at the table, while wearing robes specially designed for the exhibition. The linings are printed with images and texts about the heroines, all from non-Western cultures. They resisted their oppressors and advocated equal rights and are thus represented on the table. And this image shows Patricia Carson Hout with a group of women working on the embroidery. And she currently continues to work on this project and wants to do proper plates and all the proper elements that were also part of the Judy Chicago dinner. And she has also entered negotiations with the Sackler Center for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn Museum, and the piece might be shown there next year, as she said. Here we see one of the settings, and the woman who is honored here is Anita Baleia, a Haitian revolutionary who fought as a lieutenant in the Haitian revolution, and she was one of the few female soldiers. And when we look at the Wikipedia entry on her, we see that her face is also on the Haitian money. So she is one of the few women ever that was honored to be on currency. And here we see the space used, the WOW space used for a Black summer school. So bringing together heritage, remembering, active knowledge production, and the sharing of different generations around the table. Thank you.
Obrigada, Elke. Eu gostaria de lembrar ao público que, para fazerem as perguntas por escrito, por favor, para as pessoas que estão de preto com a camiseta do museu e estão circulando pelo auditório. Ao final, a gente vai ter um momento de conversa com a Elke, com a Renata e com a Kate Dipwell. Então, se vocês puderem entregar as perguntas, vai enriquecer muito o debate. Gostaria de chamar agora a Renata Bittencourt. A Renata é gestora cultural atuante nos âmbitos público e privado. Em sua experiência, destacam-se sua posição atual como diretora de processos museais no Instituto Brasileiro de Museus, o IBRAM, um curto período como secretária da Cidadania e da Diversidade no Ministério da Cultura, 4 anos à frente do Departamento de Formação da Secretaria de Estado de Cultura de São Paulo e 10 anos na gerência dos projetos nacionais de educação do Itaú Cultural. É historiadora da arte, tendo desenvolvido suas pesquisas de mestrado e doutorado sobre a representação do negro na pintura brasileira na Unicamp. Foi contemplada pela Associação Paulista dos Críticos de Arte, a APCA, e como Fulbright Fellow na Smithsonian Institution. Renata, por favor, obrigada.
Boa tarde. Bom, em primeiro lugar, queria agradecer o convite feito pelo MASP, pela Pinacoteca, para vir aqui participar dessa conversa em tão maravilhosa companhia. E que mulherada nesse auditório, né, hoje. Mas interessante também ver a presença masculina, né, de como a gente está sendo, como sociedade ou sociedades convidados a mudarmos de lugar para olharmos as coisas de pontos de vista diferentes, juntos, né? Então, acho que hoje é um dia para isso também. Bom, ao visitar a exposição Mulheres Radicais, uma obra parecia, para mim, dominar o espaço com as suas imagens e com seus sons, que era Me Gritaram Negra, da Vitória Santa Cruz, que já foi mencionada de manhã pela curadora Andréa Junta. Essa presença forte da obra no espaço, deixa eu ver se eu sei fazer isso aqui, não estava só vinculada à força das vozes, do coro e da própria Vitória, que compõe a obra, e nem as batidas rítmicas de percussão, não é, que davam ritmo para o poema. Vitória, né, a artista, ela mesma era a presença forte e incontornável, né? Uma mulher de pele escura, de traços negroides acentuados, naquela obra com o cabelo Black Power. E a síntese do texto que ela traz na obra assinalava esse recuo diante daquilo que se impõe às mulheres negras com o peso dos estigmas históricos e que precisam ser reconhecidos para que possamos avançar, não apenas como negros, mas como sociedades diversas, né, no tempo presente. E essa obra, Me Gritaram Negra, ao levar essa palavra negra tão forte no seu título, nas múltiplas repetições que acontecem, né, ao longo do vídeo, nos convida a refletir, a explorar sentidos relacionados a identidades de gênero e também raciais manifestas na arte, né? Então, a minha proposta hoje seria tratar de algumas artistas, mulheres negras, também circunscritas às Américas, mas em especial à América do Norte. E é claro que essa seleção não pressupõe a ideia de que as mulheres negras seriam uma categoria uniforme, as identidades não são estáticas, não é? São múltiplas, tendendo ao infinito, né? E eu queria começar com uma artista que começa sua produção num período um pouco anterior ao arco temporal proposto na exposição Mulheres Radicais, mas que, nascida nos Estados Unidos, neta de escravos, estabelece um vínculo com o México que nos oferece aqui uma possibilidade de uma visão de conexão entre as Américas. A Elizabeth Catlett opta por viver no México, e, eventualmente, ela, inclusive, renuncia à sua cidadania americana, e, chegando lá, ela vai se integrar ao taller de gráfica popular, o ateliê de gravura, né, o de impressão popular, que é um espaço que reuniu artistas de diferentes países para produzir obras de marcada preocupação social. Essa obra que a gente está vendo aqui é uma gravura de 47, um ano depois dela chegar ao México, e já havia esse ateliê funcionando há 10 anos, e se insere nesse contexto de produção em que o objetivo é a produção de uma arte que possa comunicar a realidade social, possa expor contextos também de desigualdades, de exploração do trabalhador, enfim. Também os artistas tinham interesse em apontar as tendências fascistas, europeias e o imperialismo americano. A abordagem, né, esses artistas queriam uma obra que fosse, de certa maneira, didática, né, acessível também, tirando vantagem da reprodutibilidade dos meios que estavam utilizando, né. Essa obra, especificamente, traz no título um enunciado aparentado da afirmação da Vitória Santa Cruz, não é? Que na obra vai dizer eu sou negra, né? O título é Eu Sou a Mulher Negra. A imagem é uma homenagem ao papel de figuras, né, de resistência e de força, mas também de inteligência das mulheres negras, né, papéis desempenhados historicamente. E esse close absoluto tira a ênfase do corpo para expressar uma energia mental que se manifesta no rosto. É uma obra que é parte de uma série de 15 outras imagens narrativas e celebratórias, né? E essa personagem anônima, que evoca tantas outras mulheres negras, ela parece estar imbuída de uma energia, né, uma energia concentrada, como se antecipasse uma ação, né, que denota sua potência, exaltando também o poder mobilizado ou mobilizável por sujeitos historicamente subalternizados. Já foi feita uma comparação interessante entre essa obra e o rosto do Davi de Michelangelo, semelhantes na concentração da expressão, ambas figuras passíveis de leitura em chave heróica, a lutar contra gigantes, sendo a opressão sistêmica o Golias a ser enfrentado pelas mulheres negras. Mesmo que seus feitos, grandes ou pequenos, históricos ou cotidianos, não sejam ordinariamente celebrados ou reconhecidos pelas sociedades onde se inserem. A Catlett foi proibida de entrar nos Estados Unidos por um longo período, mas permaneceu conectada com o movimento dos direitos civis, o movimento Black Power, e fez um discurso, em 61, na Conferência Nacional dos Artistas Negros, que teve uma grande influência sobre os artistas, e ela falava da necessidade de rejeitar, dos artistas negros rejeitarem o sistema de artes com seus museus e galerias e criar seus próprios circuitos com exposições de artistas negros apenas, né? Os artistas deveriam, então, produzir uma arte que expressasse identidade racial, que estabelecesse comunicação com as comunidades negras e que participasse de uma luta por igualdade social e econômica. E essa é uma fala que se soma, obviamente, à sensibilidade do momento, mas que tem uma grande influência, e nós vemos surgir, então, grupos, em seguida, como o Black Arts Movement, que seria um pouco quase um espelho, não é, do movimento dos Panteras Negras, do Black Power, dedicado à construção de uma estética negra relacionada a esse discurso revolucionário, e também um outro grupo como o Spiral, do qual fazem parte artistas como Romar Bearden, Hale Woodruff, Norman Lewis, e, dentre esse conjunto de cerca de 15, uma mulher, que é a Emma Amos, que nós vemos aqui, né? Artistas que vão debater questões éticas e também estéticas relacionadas ao seu envolvimento no movimento dos direitos civis. Já Betty Saar afirma que ela se tornou politizada a partir da morte, do assassinato de Martin Luther King em 68, mas vai ser, efetivamente, a sua obra A Liberação da Tia Jemima, que data de 72, que vai marcar uma voz política mais forte na sua trajetória. Essa personagem que nós vemos aqui corresponde ao estereótipo da Mammy, que é essa figura comum na cultura popular americana, presente em objetos colecionáveis, em marcas de produtos, e que a própria artista colecionava objetos como esse. A Mammy é essa figura é uma mulher de pele escura, lenço na cabeça, a gente a conhece também dos desenhos do Tom e Jerry, né? Ela costuma aparecer inteira, e que vive para servir uma família branca, como escrava ou serviçal. Embora seja uma figura maternal, não se dedica aos seus próprios filhos, família ou comunidade, mas serve de modo abnegado ao domicílio onde se insere, conformada com as condições em que se encontra e com sua suposta inferioridade. É a personagem também que vai estar no E o Vento Levou, não é? A figura, evidentemente, se relaciona às amas de leite e também à personagem de Monteiro Lobato, a nossa tia Anastácia. E a Betty Saar vai criar, a partir dessa meme, uma heroína, né, a partir do estereótipo. Se em uma mão ela leva uma vassoura, na outra ela carrega um rifle. mas todos os atributos estão lá. A pele escura, o lenço na cabeça, o corpo pesado, os seios volumosos, o grande sorriso vermelho e também um bebê de pele clara que nós vemos na imagem encerrada, nesse retângulo menor. Mas ela vai inserir também o punho fechado, que é símbolo do movimento Black Power, para, nessa assemblagem, criar um símbolo de uma mulher que se emancipa dos papéis esperados e dos papéis impostos, não é? E esse símbolo funciona como esse indicativo da radicalidade que deveria ser adotada naquele momento e que está presente no discurso dos Panteras Negras. Recentemente, a Angela Davis disse que o movimento das mulheres negras americanas teve início com este trabalho, que fala de empoderamento, de autonomia e de mulheres negras desejosas por romper com papéis sociais restritivos. E a artista diz: eu quis fazer dela uma guerreira. No ano seguinte, a Betty Saar vai fazer um objeto que se configura como um coquetel Molotov, criado a partir de uma garrafa vintage de vinho da Califórnia, que, a princípio, poderia atender aos desejos de colecionadores de classe média, e que ela transforma num objeto artístico de natureza contestatória e que vai se distanciar justamente desses circuitos ordinários de consumo de imagens estereotipadas, né, onde as mames aparecem também reproduzidas. Ela retoma a figura da mame para um dos lados do rótulo e o punho cerrado no verso. O lenço, né, que a gente habitualmente vê na cabeça da mame, vira um pavio de uma obra de terror agressivo, como eram agressivos aqueles tempos também. A Carol Walker vai, anos depois, também abordar esse estereótipo da mame, e que é evocado na obra Sutileza, o maravilhoso benzinho de açúcar. Essa instalação temporária foi concebida para ocupar um edifício onde funcionou uma refinaria de açúcar, Domino, que ia ser demolido, já foi, para dar lugar a um parque no Brooklyn. E ela se impõe, né, se impunha como esse colosso de 10 metros de altura, 22 metros de comprimento, constituindo uma espécie de esfinge do novo mundo, né? Ela traz os genitais expostos nessa metade animal do corpo da esfinge, mas, ao invés da pele negra, a artista opta por fazer essa gigantesca escultura de isopor que ela recobre com açúcar refinado. Dessa maneira, a artista chama atenção para o processamento da matéria-prima, que acontecia naquele espaço da refinaria, que transforma o natural em refinado, o marrom em branco, imagens úteis para reflexão sobre as relações raciais. Os seios volumosos e pendentes são um atributo feminino de significados ancestrais, mas, ao mesmo tempo, também aludem à condição de vida de mulheres viventes no contexto da diáspora negra, amas de leite ou nutrizes da sociedade em outros sentidos. Do árduo cultivo da cana ao labor do fogão, que há séculos cria doçuras a partir do açúcar, né? Somos levados a pensar no fardo de criar, de proporcionar conforto e prazer para sociedades inteiras, mesmo que não para si e para os seus. Lorraine O'Grady também vai abordar expectativas sobre o feminino. E a sua personagem, senhorita burguesa negra, Mademoiselle Bourgeoise Noire, se manifestou pela primeira vez em 1980 em uma abertura de exposição inclusive de artistas negros. Ela portava esse vestido, que é feito de dezenas e dezenas de luvas brancas que ela coleta em brechós, e um chicote de 9 pontas com o qual ela se açoita, né? Então, como uma espécie de Miss enlouquecida, ela bradava dentro da exposição: a arte negra deve correr mais riscos. Agora é momento de uma invasão, e frases como esta. Então, a performance combinava referências à raça, mas também à classe social, a tratar de construções burguesas e padrões de feminilidade, sendo as luvas símbolos de uma repressão internalizada pelas mulheres negras, que, aliás, não se sentiam contempladas pela agenda feminista. Ao mesmo tempo, abordava as representações e limites externos impostos a artistas negros e sua participação limitada no sistema das artes. Shenga Ngozi começou sua carreira atuando em parceria com outros artistas negros também em Los Angeles e em Nova York nos anos 70, e ela vai utilizar referenciais que vêm da dança, de rituais religiosos, do feminismo, referências de culturas africanas e também da cultura japonesa, trabalhando com performances, esculturas e trabalhos colaborativos. Um dos materiais que a artista utiliza são meias calças que se prestam, com sua resiliência, elasticidade, maleabilidade, resistência à interação em performances e à construção de instalações esculturais. As meias, que são essas peças de uso feminino, cotidiano, banal, são testadas em seus limites físicos, vindo a ocupar os ambientes expositivos transformadas. Em 77, ela inicia essa série, RSVP, utilizando meias de tonalidades escuras, que ela estica a partir de pontos de fixação na parede, permitindo a interação com corpos que se movem pelo espaço, corpos negros, tensionando e movendo o material, fazendo lembrar da formação em dança da artista, e também de uma motivação pessoal. A artista diz que essa série se motiva também pela observação das transformações ocorridas em seu próprio corpo a partir do nascimento do seu filho. Então, ela fala dessa experimentação, dessa expansão do corpo inerente à gravidez. E ela quer tratar também da psicologia feminina em sua capacidade de ser resiliente, né, traduzir esta percepção. O corpo pode não voltar à sua forma original quando expandido, mas a mente pode sofrer expansões sem limite, diz a artista também. Howardina Pindell vai dizer que o movimento dos direitos civis e os movimentos de liberação das mulheres tiveram uma influência sobre si e sobre o seu trabalho. E ela trata de como buscou, para além disso, desta vivência de um feminismo da época e do movimento dos direitos civis, de compreender como opera o racismo e o sexismo dentro da comunidade artística. Na obra Livre, Branca e com 21, Howardina vai relatar uma série de situações que ela enfrenta de racismo relacionadas ao seu período como uma aluna, ainda criança, a participação em um casamento em que ela é a única convidada negra. E essa é uma obra que ela vai realizar depois de sofrer um acidente de carro que a deixa com problemas de memória. Então, é uma obra que funciona, de uma certa maneira, como uma retomada de algo relacionado às suas vivências, mas também para evidenciar situações que são as de preconceito. Ela se representa nesse vídeo, se apresenta como ela própria, como nós vemos ali à esquerda de vocês, mas também como uma mulher branca, com uma peruca loira e óculos escuros. Essa personagem vai fazer um contraponto e vai, diante dos relatos que Howardina faz, vai chamá-la de paranoica, vai a advertir dizendo que ela deve responder às expectativas, que ela deve se encaixar naquilo que é esperado, porque, se ela não fizer, ela deixa de ser a token, que é essa presença negra que marca um pouco a diversidade dentro daquele ambiente do sistema das artes. Então, se ela não fizer o que é preciso para ser validada, eles encontrarão outro token. Essa é a fala desta mulher nesse vídeo. E a Howardina vai dizer: decidi fazer essa obra, Free, White and 21, depois de me defrontar mais de uma vez com o racismo do sistema das artes e também com o feminismo branco. Estava me sentindo isolada como token. A Adrienne Piper é apenas 5 anos mais jovem que Pindell. Formou-se, ela desenvolve uma carreira paralela, né, estudando filosofia, se torna também uma docente universitária, né, estuda em Harvard, depois se torna uma docente. E muitas das suas obras vão tratar também de percepções limitadas por estereótipos, muitas aplicadas frequentemente a ela, como mulher negra de pele clara, mas que se identificou sempre como negra. Esse autorretrato, exagerando meus traços negroides, trata da desconstrução de noções essencialistas de identidade. Suas obras parecem ter como objetivo a elevação da consciência ao tratar de raça, racismo, classe e gênero. A artista tenta deslocar concepções preconcebidas que habitam o imaginário genérico e que impedem a visão efetiva dos sujeitos em suas especificidades. Então, ao mesmo tempo, ela nega as demandas sociais para que ela se passe por branca. Aqui nós temos autorretrato como senhora branca simpática. Essa imagem é contrariada pela frase, que aparece ali naquele balão, como uma história em quadrinhos, que utiliza um modo de falar urbano, negro e popular, traduzido em uma escrita codificada para enfatizar o vernacular e o palavrão. What are you looking at, motherfucker? Ou o que você está olhando, filho, etc. O olhar plácido é negado pela frase de confronto, como se a agressividade deixasse implícita uma negritude que deixa de ser percebida e que compõe a sua identidade. Vocês acham que eu sou essa branca ou quase branca boazinha? De fato, eu sou negra. Se me vissem assim, minha identidade sofreria mudanças na sua percepção. Adrienne cria também um alter ego masculino, que ela vai chamar de o ser mítico. E nas performances em que ela encarna essa identidade masculina, ela vai percorrer as ruas, museus, lojas e metrô. E ela se caracterizava, então, com este personagem, de que também é diferente dela mesma por diferentes marcadores de gênero e de origem social. Ela vai se apresentar como um homem negro de origem popular, vai registrar em vídeos e fotos essa interação e a reação das pessoas, vai também inserir imagens dele no Village Voice, um jornal de circulação alternativa, contornando, não é, ou evitando uma inserção, naquele momento, no circuito oficial das artes. Em uma hora, esse alter ego está paquerando mulheres brancas, e, em outro momento, como aqui, uma fotografia em que ela faz interferência sobre a imagem para inserir a frase "eu encarno tudo o que você mais odeia e teme". Assim, a artista evidencia o caráter fabricado das percepções sociais e dos estereótipos e faz de seu corpo um laboratório para problematizar essas percepções. E ela faz o mesmo com a obra Como é, o que é, em que um homem negro, em um vídeo exibido numa espécie de arena, não é, que cerca esta torre central, onde há monitores de vídeo em todas as faces, esse homem negro que aparece na imagem repete frases como: "Eu não sou preguiçoso. Eu não sou vulgar. Eu não sou estúpido. Eu não sou servil. Eu não sou sujo", negando os adjetivos que o público poderia lhe atribuir, já que estão costurados nas mentalidades historicamente construídas e associadas a negros. Lorna Simpson é uma artista que aborda a fabricação de identidades e de percepções por outros procedimentos. Na obra 20 Perguntas, uma Amostra, que é uma referência a um jogo em que um membro de um grupo pensa em uma pessoa e os demais tentam adivinhar quem é ao fazer perguntas, né? A artista apresenta 4 imagens de uma mulher mostrada de costas, portanto, com seu rosto oculto. E o título da obra, 20 Perguntas, uma amostra, aparece escrito nessa etiqueta central em cima. E 5 perguntas, então, aparecem escritas embaixo. Na primeira etiqueta aparece: "Ela é bonita como um retrato?" E nas seguintes: ou clara como cristal, ou pura como um lírio, ou preta como carvão, ou afiada como uma lâmina. Essas frases, que parecem clichês poéticos ou raciais, tratam de percepções genéricas e generalizantes, mas que o rosto oculto na imagem, né, que se repete sem alterações, recusa a confirmar. O observador é chamado a perceber o seu papel como agente na construção dos significados identitários. E a obra, então, nos convida a julgar, a classificar e a comentar algo sobre essa mulher que, na realidade, é opaca para nós. A artista também vai apontar as diferenças de poder entre quem representa e quem é representado, seja nas fotografias etnográficas do século XIX ou na mídia dos séculos XX e XXI, e também na classificação museográfica, não é? Da onde essas etiquetas são um pouco aparentadas, né? Em outras obras, Lorna vai utilizar a cabeça e o cabelo como locus de significado. Ela busca imagens de mulheres negras em revistas negras como Ebony e Jet, dos períodos dos anos 50 aos anos 70. Em algumas, os cabelos vão adquirir uma qualidade plástica, expansiva e mágica, como se simbolizassem as diferentes dimensões impalpáveis dessas mulheres, portadoras nessas obras de beleza absoluta. Em outras, ela parece criar deusas atemporais, feitas de elementos naturais, a quem ela atribui dimensões sobre-humanas. Ela cria mulheres negras preciosas, portadoras de poderes transcendentes. Vangesh Muthu é uma artista nascida no Quênia, mas hoje residente nos Estados Unidos. As suas colagens são obras contundentes, intrincadas também. Surgem da combinação de imagens de revistas, de livros, também pintura, materiais aplicados para tratar do corpo feminino negro, de construções de identidade e de alteridade. Na série Histologia das diferentes classes de tumores uterinos, a artista sobrepõe diagramas médicos ginecológicos com recortes de revistas, fotografias e glitter para criar figuras híbridas e grotescas. Essas colagens retomam o sexual assombroso aportado por imagens de origem africana, das Demoiselles d'Avignon, de Picasso, e são obras que abordam gênero, raça e violência, associando elementos díspares como graça e contaminação. Uma terceira visão se constitui nas obras pelo foco criado pelo sexo, fazendo o feminino e o racial se constituírem dolorosamente, um conjunto tortuoso. Hipertrofia cervical é o nome dessa obra da esquerda, e catarro uterino da outra obra mostrada aqui. Os processos históricos vividos no mundo atlântico talvez tenham resultado em sociedades diversificadas, mas onde estão presentes relações adoecidas. E somos hoje desafiados a buscar compreender o mundo contemporâneo com as suas mazelas e disfunções. Talvez seja disso que a artista esteja falando. Muito obrigada.
A gente vai agora para a última fala dessa segunda mesa. Eu gostaria de lembrar, pedir para continuarem mandando perguntas. A gente tem recebido algumas, agradecer as que a gente já recebeu. E eu gostaria de chamar aqui a Kate Deepwell. A Kate é fundadora e editora do N Paradoxa, International Feminist Art Journal, que funcionou de 1998 a 2017, e da KT Press, de 98 até hoje. É professora de arte, teoria e crítica contemporânea na Middlesex University. Entre seus livros publicados estão All Women Art Spaces in Europe in the Long 1970s, editado em colaboração com Ada Jakubowska, pela Liverpool University Press em 2018, Feminist Art Manifestos and Anthology, Women Artists Between the Wars, pela Manchester University Press em 2010. Desculpa, o outro é pela Katie Press de 2014, é uma publicação digital. Gender Art Theory Anthology, editado em colaboração com Mila Bredikina, desculpa a pronunciação, em Moscou, pela Rospen, 2005, Dialogues, Women Artists from Ireland, IB Taurus, de 2005, Women Artists and Modernism, pela Manchester University Press, em 98, e New Feminist Art Criticism, Critical Strategies, em 95. Kate, por favor.
Once again, I'd like to thank very much the organisers for this opportunity to come to Brazil for the first time in my life, and to also have the opportunity to see this very interesting exhibition, because I live in London and I don't travel much to the US, so it's a fantastic opportunity for me to see this exhibition. So my thanks again to the organisers. And I'm just doing a generic thank you, because if I had to thank everybody, it would take about another 10 minutes of my talk, and I'd rather give you my talk. So I feel that it's my job as someone who's invited to speak to try and draw out the relationship between the work that I do and the reason for being here. And the exhibition, this fantastic exhibition with artists from 15 countries around South America, it seems a necessary thing to spell out perhaps the larger local and global dynamics of which it is a part. So I'm going to try and explain how I see the local and global dynamics in feminism and contemporary art matching elements of this story that is presented in the exhibition. So this might seem rather rambling, but I've tried to bring out very strong contrasts between different types of feminism and different types of feminist approach which are operating around the world today. So I want to begin with this very influential exhibition, which is now 22 years old. And it might seem strange to begin a talk about feminism with another exhibition rather than the one that we can look at today in the Pinacoteca. Oh, sorry. Okay. But there's a very influential and important quote in here, which is the theme of what I want to talk about, which is the contrast between history being in one place and presence being in another. And this contrast between how we write histories and how we perceive, or our perceptions of the presence of women artists, is what I'd like to try and draw out today. And I see these as full of contradictions. On the one hand, we have a kind of hypervisibility of women artists in the art scene today. But then on the other hand, we have erasure and a lot of forgotten or marginalized women artists. And I see this as a kind of temporal problem, but I also see it as a big geopolitical problem. And this is largely to do with the stories that we tell about feminism, and it's also to do with our expectations for how we should see and present and understand this very complex relationship between art and feminist politics. So taking this seminar as an opportunity to talk about this, I would just like to say a few slightly critical remarks, that the dominant story that we have today is the story about feminism as an avant-garde, a sequence of pioneers producing work from the 1970s which challenged the representation of women largely through abolic politics. And I'm showing here two images, which is of another touring exhibition, which is touring around Europe largely, of feminist avant-garde from the 70s, which is the collection of the Sammlung Museum. And I want to show here that in Vienna it's presented under the title Woman, and in Germany it's presented under the title Feminism. So just to explain to you that this mobility between the terms feminism, woman, and real women artists is really what we need to explore. Now, there have been many exhibitions, and a lot of these I have tried to map on my website, which have looked at different critical and regional and racial variations of this story. And the question is it the story, or is it the ever-diversification of different groups of women that we should be looking for? So I'm a bit curious about how this story has become so dominant, and at the same time, will we solve the problem of feminism's relationship to the Art Academy or the museum by only looking at a constant flow of gaps, closures, and absences in this very fragile story about what feminism has now achieved in a little moment of institutionalization? So what I want to draw attention to is the fact that many feminists at many different times have been drawing attention to the problems of women's relationship to a historical past. So these are some of the exhibitions most well known in 2007, the Global Feminisms and the WAC exhibition, which have put this story forward, but simultaneously in the same year, in different countries, there were a whole suite of exhibitions also examining the legacies of feminism. So there have been lots of exhibitions doing this. I'll just show a few more. Most recent ones from Lithuania and Italy, and from Australia, which look back at a previous exhibition. In the case of Lithuania and Italy, it was an exhibition called Magma, and in the case of Australia, it was the Women's Show from 1977. So we have this kind of bouncing historical thesis about recovering the 70s for the present, and at the same time, we are constantly building in scholarship different trajectories, different understandings of what feminism is and where it could be present. So, having said these things, I then wanted to concentrate on where a particular interest that I have, which is Monica Meyer's work, intersects, because Monica Meyer is a big part of this exhibition, and to raise this question of one of her works, which is discussed in the catalogue but has very limited presence in the show, which is the translation project. This also ties in with Elke's paper. So the idea that women come together, and that in coming together, they form a transnational dialogue or they initiate a transnational project has a long history. It's been happening all the way through the 70s. Monica Meyer's meeting point, where she invited women from America to come to Mexico and learn about the situation of women in Mexico and use that as an opportunity for a debate about feminism, women and art, and then fed back the results of that debate and discussion in an artwork. Now, Meyer's practice is increasingly become clear by her recent exhibition, the Retro Collective, and her practice has been for a long time taking care to document, to map, to bring together instances of women's involvement in feminism. So I just wanted to say that there's this strange timeline in this. I published an article, and this is the imprint of the article in M. Paradoxa when I set it up, by Monica Meyer. But this was already 20 years since the translations project had taken place. And then now, here I am, speaking 20 years later about her retrocollective exhibition. So we're kind of bouncing all the time through different constructions of history. However, one of the reasons that I feel that I was invited to this was to explain or talk about the project of Paradoxa and the ways in which it touches on research as a theme and tries to map and bring together resources which will enable us to think differently about feminism in the light of the idea that feminism never happened, or that somehow feminism is constantly under erasure, it's always disappearing. So a group of women come together and they invent feminism. And this invention of feminism by groups of women has been happening for a long time. So each new group of women coming together is inventing a new kind of feminism. So if any of you women in the audience, after hearing this talk, get together and you decide what will Brazilian feminism look like, you will have a debate about Brazilian feminism which borrows from the transnational, the international dimensions of feminism, and you will start a new feminist movement in Brazil. And we would welcome you to the range and dimensions of other feminist projects which have done exactly the same. Okay, so 20 years ago, I decided that I was going to put up a book list online, and I was going to start a magazine, and I was going to forward the dimensions of feminism for my colleagues and anyone else who was prepared to read or look or think about what feminism was. I didn't do this in isolation. I did this mapping and knowing and understanding that there were many other journals before me, and there were many other feminist initiatives before me. And I could situate what I was doing in the history of all those initiatives and also learn from and gain an enormous understanding of what those debates in feminism had been before me by learning from them. So this was one thing that I wanted to do. But I had this idea that feminism, while it could be a personal network, while it could be a personal relationship, what was happening with contemporary art was the increasing meeting of art on a global basis. So how could we take feminism into a global dimension? How could we explore the transnationalism of feminism? So I started, and these are two little graphs from my website where I use this alphabetical list system of searching items in the database to try and illuminate the transnational dimensions of feminism. Because feminism hasn't been happening in one country. Feminism is not owned by one country. Feminism has had multiple histories and multiple stories to tell in different countries. And there needs to be a stronger recognition of this global dimension to feminism. Global beyond a critical regionalism, and global beyond the framework of one nation state. We still have this problem that the group of women who get together are seen entirely as a local problem of feminism. It's a local problem with a local story competing locally against a local system of museums or a local art world. And maybe what we need is a stronger understanding of how all these different locales add up to quite a significant global and transnational network, as well as a multi-layered and multi-historical network of examples. So I started a project a couple of years ago with one of my PhD students, mapping in 37 countries all the research that had been done by PhD students and MA students, and we came up with a database pretty quickly of 1,000 PhDs and MAs. My database of books on women artists collectively was already about 500. So we're not talking about one or two instances. We're not talking about the single rare exhibition, fantastic as though the single rare exhibition can be. we actually have to understand the very large and complex picture that we're operating in. So this is just another illustration, it's rather didactic, to show you that over the years, because my magazine ran for 20 years, over those years I published as many articles about China as about France. And I also thought I would show you this image, which is a section of my library. And these are just to show you that there are multiple publications about feminism. There are multiple catalogues, multiple books that you can lay your hands on. And so these are two things from my library. And they're British examples, so I have to talk about it in my own country. So this is a tiny pamphlet that was produced in 1977, which I managed to find in a second-hand bookstore. And this was put together by the earliest women who had formed the women's liberation movement and organized the first women's liberation movement exhibition in 1971. And Monica Sjöö, who's a Swedish woman who lived in Bristol, was very influential in that movement because she wrote many pamphlets criticizing the white liberal establishment at the time. And some of these are reprinted in this publication called MAMA, Women Artists Together, along with, which was put together by a collective from Birmingham called Phoenix. Now, what is happening today is that, as the second publication on the right shows you, a commercial gallery called Ravens Row is now able to organize an exhibition commemorating the history of this early women's liberation movement, politics. So what we have is a co-option, a new kind of interest from commercial galleries in a radical history, a radical initiative, which had no space in commercial galleries at the time, which had only been able to be shown in libraries, public libraries, in marginal spaces, in community centres. So had no visibility in the museum whatsoever. And this is also to reiterate something that Elke's already touched on, which is in my latest book. We started to realize by grouping together, this book is 10 essays by different scholars from across Europe, and by looking at 10 different countries, we started to map a new reassessment of the differences in location, the differences in locale between events in France, in Austria, in Germany, and Sweden. And this is just to indicate in 1975 what was happening when UNESCO's International Year of Women took place. And also, I'm going back to the story of Monica Meyer, because this special issue of Arte Visual in 1976 was a conference that had been brought together to discuss the lack of representation of local Mexican artists in these historical exhibitions of the history of women in art in Mexico. Simultaneously, in Australia, in Austria, in the Netherlands, other exhibitions were taking place. So we don't yet have even a map for 1975 of the trans-historical dimensions to feminism. And in my journal over many years with many different authors and writers, I feel like I have been publishing little bits of this story. Individual scholars from around the world have been looking at little bits of this story, either transnational global projects or a local project like MAWA, which is the Mentoring Association of Women in Winnipeg, or the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design Feminist Collective. Now, each of these articles are a little part of the story, and that's the problem, is that we don't have some nice, happy book where the whole story can be told. What we have are many little, multiple, partial perspectives. And we're working towards a larger, more comprehensive mapping of the range of initiatives and activities of women artists. So we do need to look at the range of groups. Here are just some which have been operating in the last 20 years. Nostras Propemos, which we talked about, Andrea talked about. But there's also the Red Mine Collective, who's producing a series of living archive exhibitions. Were Manifesto, which ran residencies and international artist collective meetings in Thailand in the years between 1997 and 2008. And here's some other ones which you could find links to. Women Down the Pub, which is a group of women in Denmark who got together to try and analyse the situation of women in relationship to the waves of feminism in Denmark. Or the Zurich-based group of 11 female artists who organised interventions for 7 years in public and private spaces in Switzerland. Now, then I thought, well, how can I explain to you the diversity? I'm already adding on layers of diversity of this history. But then I thought about Documenta. I myself have done feminist interventions in Documenta. I am not alone in this. Utameta Bauer did a fantastic intervention in Documenta in the late 90s. So here are collectives of women which have been honoured in different ways in Documenta at different moments. Again, these are partial and fragmentary. They don't have any unifying identity to them. And then I thought, well, then I have to also explain how the themes of M. Paradoxa have been attempting to collect together, like a curated exhibition, a group of women artists who are working on one set of ideas, or a group of curators who are working on one set of ideas. So in the previous slide, the cyber feminists, represented by the Old Boys Network, in the Women and New Media edition of M. Paradoxa, I had the opportunity to be one of the first people to publish a solo book about cyber feminism. This was before the first wave of cyber feminist publications took off. And the same with this special issue that I did with BC Silva on Africa and its diasporas. It's a very unusual publication, and it's before Contemporary And had even started publication, just as a way of trying to draw attention to the phenomenal amount of women artists working in and out of Africa, of African descent. This is my particular intervention in Documenta, very modest, but we did do a public talk, which was published, and it was part of the magazine project of Documenta, because M. Paradoxa was one of the magazines promoted in Documenta, and it was a mapping project about numbers. You know, just asking the question, is it an accurate measure of progress in the position of women if the numbers of women artists slowly rise? And cross-nationally, transnationally, 30% is now the average score. Under modernism, it was 10%, so 30% is now the average score. If you go to Japan, if you go to London, if you go to Milan, about 30% representation will be found. What is the face of contemporary feminism today? So there's a lot of contemporary feminism which is this kind of protest art. So protest art which imitates or borrows from street performance and literally the language of demonstrations, and tries ironically to think about needlecraft or captions and slogans as representative of feminism. So these are just two examples, one from Ireland, one from Melbourne. But there's also another dimension which is represented by these two examples, Coco Fusco looking at what happened to Angela Davis and all the women who looked like Angela Davis, who were known as Mrs. Gilbert and were caught by the police. And Liliana Anguelo, ironically again, just as in the previous speaker, taking a kind of Black Mama, Black Jemima perspective and trying to treat it ironically. So we have this endless replay going on of different histories of black slavery, different histories of black identities, and different histories of protest or moments of contestation. There's a lot of people, for example, who focused on Rosa Parks as an icon of black feminism in the US. Then I thought I would show this because this shows how mixed up our histories are. Because of the recent exhibition, I could easily find Michelle Wallace and Faith Ringgold protesting in the Art Workers Coalition outside the Whitney Museum. This is how it's captioned in the Black Women Artists show that's just been on at the Brooklyn Museum. But I had to photograph from one of my own books, The Power of Feminist Art, the image of Lucy Lippard, who is carrying exactly the same protest placard, 50% Black women artists, and was on these 4 months of marches and helped to organize the protest. So we have this kind of, which version are we celebrating? Are we celebrating the white feminist version, or are we celebrating the black feminist version? And how do these stories circulate? This is just to raise this as a problem, something we could discuss about. I also wanted to talk about the contradictions of the museum. So here we have some protests that have been organised at the Tate recently. Black Pain is not for profit. This young group of mixed race, LGBTQ protesters of the BBZ collective, which is actually 2 DJs who have got together to make interventions in the art and music scene. And then the Where is Anna Mendieta collective. Now, both of these are imitating and borrowing from and understanding previous protest movements. The WAC 1992 protest, this is why they decided when Carl Andre was at the Tate that they would come out and protest, Where is Anna Mendieta? And Black Pain is not for profit. There was a very famous guy who stood in front of a painting that was the subject of a controversy at the Whitney Museum, and they are copying that kind of style of protest. But this is happening in a museum who is not frightened to put on Tanya Bruguera's Tatlin's Whisper. So we have this incredible tolerance that the museum now has to occupy because it has to cope with protests coming from the street and at the same time put on controversial works of art. Feminism also has another dimension to it. It has this very vibrant, colourful alternative art scene represented by the Push Pops collective in Brooklyn, queer feminist art, but then it also has the very scholarly, analytical, post-Marxist attempt to analyse the situation of women and labour put forward by Harter. So both dimensions of this are simultaneously present in feminism. So I also wanted to draw attention to the critical regionalism in the work, which I believe is a kind of like reactive call to arms that was also generated by the 2007 exhibitions of WAC and Global Feminisms. So this is my interview with Bojana Pejic and the gender check reader, and her subsequent exhibition, Good Girls, which was another way of looking specifically at the politics of feminism in post-socialist countries. Across Asia, you can find many initiatives through the 2000s. The last magazine catalogue, See Arts, I was the guest editor for that edition, but it was an attempt to have a transnational Asian debate happening in just the same way that the Latin American show does. Zendar, which mapped the history of 20 years of feminism in Russia, or the most recent show, which is currently on, Bread and Roses, which is at Künstlerquartier Momentum, Künstlerquartier Britannien in Berlin. And this is part of an export drive by the Kazakhstani government to present women at the forefront of contemporary art from Kazakhstan. Now, the politics of museums, because we are in a museum, and this museum is about to consider what it will do next in a program of exhibitions. I just thought I would say a few words about several not so good examples from contemporary art museums attempting to document and represent the works of artists. Tate Modern has a collection in which actually the totality of the collection is only 10% women artists. So the Tate collection is very underrepresentative of women artists. Yet the new director, Frances Modern, has been saying that 1/3 of the contemporary art collection is actually by women. And the rehang of Tate Modern was designed to promote women artists. And they had a large number of solo exhibitions of women artists contained within the museum space. They opened the exhibition, this is the first room of the new reopened thing, contrasting the Guerrilla Girls with the image of Marilyn Monroe by Andy Warhol. However, the only room in the 2016 rehang which had a warning sign on it, "Do not enter, you might be offended," was the Feminism and Media room. So this was a classic museum mistake to marginalize feminism while promoting women artists. When I went to Japan in the summer, I was very intrigued to find out that the National Museum of Modern Art have dedicated a single room, and they have labeled it, "There are only women in this room." And as it turns out, in the previous 7 rooms, there was only 1 female artist. And after that is when you hit the generation of Kusama and Yoko Ono, right, and Tanaka. So in the preceding rooms, the history of Japanese art is represented only by men. This is modern painting in Japan. So this is a very interesting space in which they've created a special space, but it's only for 3 months, to celebrate women artists in abstraction who are the forebears of Kusama, who is their #1 Japanese product. Okay, so then I thought, well, we live in a world of social media. No one's talked about social media, so here's my social media example. This is the Tate women artists. This is what their Pinterest looks like. And their Pinterest is an Instagram account. Now, if you look very carefully at the Instagram account, this is the YBA story of art, plus a few golden women artists. And it's a very interesting reveal about what aspects of the collection they're actually prepared to promote as women artists. For a long time, on the Tate Modern website, these 3 images represented feminism. So this is Beware of Fascist Feminism by Hannah Wilker, this untitled photograph by Cindy Sherman, and this image of 2 black women by Lubaina Himid. This was what feminism represented in the entirety of the Tate Modern website. Today, it looks like this. Well, it did in 2016, because this is a capture from 2016, in which there is this lovely statement, which is pure tautology. Feminist art is art by women artists made consciously in the light of developments in feminist art theory in the early 1970s. Which came first, feminist theory or feminist women artists? This is a really hard one to crack, chicken and egg situation. So, I'm saying sarcastic things about my primary museum in the city where I live, and I'm entitled to probably, but I do want to say very nicely that they also find time to read Paradoxa. True, it takes them 6 years to catch up, but they do read Paradoxa, and here they have decided to restage 2 women artists from 2 avant-gardes who haven't been given much consideration at all in the Tate, which is Irina Nakova from Russia and Zhao Lu. And these 2 works are currently available for people to see in the Tate, and I am very pleased that these 2 works are available for people to see in the Tate. So I very much hope that when MASP decides to foreground women artists, as many museums around the world are doing, that they don't make these primary errors. That's the end of my talk.
Bom, gostaria de agradecer a fala das 3 palestrantes de hoje, e a gente tem um tempinho para debate agora. está um pouquinho atrasado, então a gente vai ter umas 4h10 de conversa. Eu vou continuar recebendo perguntas, então, se vocês continuarem mandando para o pessoal que está vestido de preto, a gente já recebeu várias aqui, mas eu vou tentar ler todas, possivelmente, se o tempo permitir. Eu vou um pouco na ordem das falas e, no final, vou dirigir algumas perguntas a todas. Então, a primeira pergunta, é interessante que a Elke falou um pouco sobre esses agrupamentos de mulheres e iniciativas que nascem não apenas no meio da arte, mas em outras situações dentro do ativismo, afinal, o feminismo é sobre isso. E eu gostaria, uma pergunta que surgiu várias vezes no meio, enfim, do público e algo que também vem sendo questionado, é como essas práticas ativistas, esses agrupamentos de mulheres poderiam tanto mudar a maneira como as mulheres se relacionam com o espaço público da rua, quanto com o museu. Como essas práticas podem afetar tanto esse espaço da esfera pública quanto um espaço institucional? Como é essa alimentação, esse diálogo?
Feminist practices have tried to put forward all kinds of solutions as the problem of patriarchal space keeps not being the same, but actually changing and becoming maybe even more toxic or even more problematic. And I think one answer was that women created their own spaces or separatist spaces, and the book that Katie edited is co-edited, is very much part of this answer. So to say we don't want anything to do with these patriarchal institutions because they will always assimilate us into something we don't want to be assimilated into. And then I think another approach was maybe very different. So when we think about a lot of the civil rights movements or ecological movements or other political movements where feminists were part of, they were not separatist. They tried to fight collective struggles with a lot of different allies. So I think one of the strategies is to find allies, and this is a terminology that is very much used today. And then I think there is a generation of women, maybe like I'm part of this generation of women who entered the institution, and find themselves always asking the question, how much can one change an institution? How much does an institution change oneself? And could there ever be a feminist institution? So not the feminist in the institution, but what would a feminist institution be that is intersectional, inclusive, and many of the things we have heard today or spoken about today. So I don't think there's any one answer, but I think there's a lot of very hard work / labor to change things and to put forward what we might want to call transformative practice.
Vocês gostariam de comentar também, Renata, Kate, essa pergunta? Vocês também podem comentar se vocês quiserem.
I would agree with Elke that there are many different strategies, but the problem that I usually find is that people are ignorant of the strategies. They just haven't reached out and found literature, books, connecting points, examples, small write-ups, which have inspired them. We have the internet now. We have libraries that are widely sharing this information. We have free articles. We have many resources. The internet has become the hugest visual archive in the world. If you have the name of an artist or the name of a group, you can usually find at least one photograph about them. But even feminism is very poorly served by the internet, and it's sort of at the edge of references. You know, it's only the latest exhibition which seems to dominate the internet, and you have to search really hard to find things in the 70s and 60s, you know, unless it's been recently archived or recently brought back into a museum show. That was my example about the black protests outside the Whitney.
Eu vou fazer só aproveitar esse gancho sobre a internet, sobre as redes, e vou fazer uma pequena quebra na ordem, só porque a gente está dentro desse assunto, e fazer uma pergunta para você, Kate, na verdade, porque uma pergunta que apareceu do público era sobre a publicação como uma prática ativista. Então, a importância, porque a gente tem acesso a todas essas informações na internet, mas como você vê essa atuação como a publicação, por exemplo, o N Paradoxa, entre muitas outras revistas e fanzines, como elas conseguem, quais estratégias possíveis você vê dentro do campo da publicação, de resistência, de criação de redes. Eu queria que você comentasse um pouquinho essa prática. Desculpa se foi um pouco confuso, é porque eu estou tentando juntar várias perguntas numa só.
It's very clear. Publication is very important. That's why I showed this 1977 publication, just to give you some insight into the fact that feminists have been doing this for a long time. It's not just the beautiful, big, thick, you know, wonderful exhibition catalogue. We have like thousands of these now, but that isn't the only thing. We also have a lot of free PDF kind of internet circulation of material. So there's a lot of information out there. You can easily access it, but what people are lacking is this narrative. They're not sure of what the narrative should be. Right? So I told you about the dominant narrative. The dominant narrative is that feminism started in the 70s. This explosion of internet interest in feminism in the 70s is centered around a body politic. But if that's the only narrative about feminism, what happened in the decades that followed? What happened in the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s or the 2010s? There are many other kinds of stories to tell. We've got a kind of incredible eco-feminism going back to the 70s. But we had that before. I was part of the generation who first wrote about the bad girls. You know, that was my, you know, the beginning of my writing. I did a lot of writing about the bad girls and trying to reassess these exhibitions. And the bad girls were supposed to be the sassy black, you know, took from the black women their sassiness and spoke back and stuck their tongues out at patriarchy and, you know, did all kinds of rebellious acts. And that was a kind of post-punk DIY culture in which everybody felt that they could make their own magazines and make their own reality. So that was actually what characterized the 90s, and it was a very strong looking back at the 70s. It's quite different from the reinvention of a kind of body identity politics now that we've got in looking back at the 70s.
Obrigada. Uma pergunta okay?
If there's time,
Claro.
I can just add to the question of publication, because the salons I mentioned, like Nathalie Barney and the Nadal sisters, they very much published and edited. So the Nadal sisters edited, co-edited and wrote in La Dépêche Africaine, which was one of the most important journals for the diaspora and also for what was later called decolonization. And Nathalie Barney promoted other women writers and made it possible for them to publish. So I think supporting each other, going also back to your first question, so what is it, how to change public space and institutions to create these structures or these performative structures of support that actually include publishing, I think is a very interesting strategy.
Obrigada. Aqui tem uma pergunta para Renata. Renata, já como falamos sobre a questão da visibilidade de artistas mulheres afro-brasileiras nos anos 60 e 70 pela manhã, Você poderia comentar se uma história similar poderia ser contada sobre o Brasil, igualmente a sua apresentação sobre os Estados Unidos? E aqui tem uma outra pergunta. Você prefere responder essa e eu faço a outra? E tem uma outra pergunta que é: durante a apresentação você coloca que o Black Art Movement foi um desdobramento dos Panteras Negras. Muitos historiadores colocam os movimentos artísticos e culturais como mero reflexo social, mas a arte também não seria capaz de interferir na sociedade em que está inserida?
Bom, eu acho que essa escolha por falar de artistas americanos teve algumas motivações, mas é claro que eu imagino que, ao tratar deles, a gente está tratando de questões que encontram paralelos e relacionamentos com a realidade brasileira. Mais do que isso, eu vejo em alguns artistas brasileiros algumas convergências temáticas ou de sensibilidade, de poética, com artistas negros brasileiros, com artistas negros americanos também, né? Então é uma reflexão que eu acho que acaba expandindo um pouco o nosso campo de observação e de análise, né? Acho interessante pensar na própria Lorna Simpson, que é uma das artistas que eu trouxe aqui, ou na Carrie Mae Weems, num diálogo com a Rosana Paulino, né? Que são artistas negras próximas aí em geração, que vão olhar para a produção fotográfica. A Rosana Paulino faz isso também, olhar o corpo da mulher negra, reprocessar narrativas históricas, né? Nesse contexto, assim como eu acho que David Hammonds, que é um artista negro americano, e o Jaime Laureano, que é um contemporâneo negro brasileiro também, encontram diálogos. Quer dizer, eu acho que um professor uma vez me disse que a gente nada como uma obra de arte para explicar outra, né? Então esse seria um pouco o exercício desejado, né? E acho também que acaba sendo pedagógica essa possibilidade de contemplar como esses artistas americanos vão sistematicamente falar da dificuldade de relacionamento com o sistema das artes, né, com as instituições, e as instituições, obviamente, feitas de pessoas, né, que é uma temática difícil e sensível para a nossa realidade aqui, brasileira também, né. Então, eu acho que acaba reforçando preocupações que estão presentes no nosso cotidiano. Tem uma questão que é o modo como a pesquisa sobre a produção de negros, homens e mulheres americanas, apresenta um volume de informação que é bastante grande e é impressionante, né? Em especial nesse momento em que as instituições estão interessadas, talvez mais do que nunca, em resgatar nomes, em expor, em criar catálogos, novas publicações, etc., enquanto no Brasil a gente talvez dependa de maiores esforços, inclusive de pesquisa, né? Esse revirar da terra, né? Das histórias consolidadas, para observar novos nomes surgindo, novas perspectivas sobre os artistas que nós conhecemos também, né? Para que essas narrativas possam se configurar de uma maneira um pouco mais coesa e um pouco mais consistente, né? Eu também, pensando na segunda pergunta, fico pensando no Black Art Movement, né, uma palavra que eu acho interessante para falar do relacionamento com os movimentos de direitos civis, que é a ideia de espelho, né, quer dizer, são ações complementares manifestas de modo diferente no contexto do tecido social, usando linguagens artísticas e a linguagem discursiva e imagens, quer dizer, tudo isso vai criar um pouco um caldo que impacta a sensibilidade da sociedade americana. E então, assim, como disse a Catherine, né, quer dizer, isso, o que vem primeiro, né, o que se manifesta antes, ou quando a Angela Davis fala, vem primeiro esta obra, né, como algo que materializa o que está no ar e o que está presente nas mentes de todos. Quer dizer, eu acho que há essa alimentação, retroalimentação também. E claro que tudo com imenso potencial transformador, né? E nós vivemos hoje dias em que isso é preciso dizer e repetir, né? Do potencial transformador da arte, né? Para as mentalidades, para a realidade e para cada um dos indivíduos.
Obrigada, Renata. Tem uma pergunta que, na verdade, eu vou dirigir a todas. Ela foi feita para Kate, mas eu acho que é uma questão que todas podem responder, e eu acho que vão surgir diferentes opiniões. Se vocês acham que é possível falar num feminismo de quarta onda e como caracterizar isso. Eu sei que, por exemplo, a Elke comentou durante a fala dela que ela tem algumas críticas sobre a ideia de enxergar o feminismo em ondas, e talvez, de repente, a gente pudesse comentar um pouco sobre isso.
So I was actually referencing some of my colleagues in Vienna who have a Latin American background, and they are very much opposed to the rating of feminism according to a historiography of waves that begins in the mid-19th century. And they always talk about the ocean of feminism that maybe has many waves, but cannot be categorized as such. And I very much like their critique, but I think sometimes we also reference an existing historiography in order to acknowledge that it has been established. So when we critique something, we very often acknowledge what we critique. It's kind of a dialectical dilemma. I'm not sure if they're in the fourth wave, maybe we are in the fifth or sixth wave, so there are many different waves that have been named or counted. I guess what has really changed tremendously is that we have digital feminism, or that there are digital media that connect people globally and transnationally. And then I think, as we all know, we live in a world where, in your country, in Brazil, and in my country, I live in Austria, and in many other countries, we have right-wing fascist governments that are promoting authoritarian neoliberalism and a way of exploiting bodies and openly promoting misogyny that create feminism. So you could say that whenever the times are really bad, it's a very good time for feminism. So in a very depressing way, there is a necessity for new political organizing and understanding better how to not only reclaim past feminisms, but very much claim our contemporary time.
Obrigada. Alguém quer comentar?
Eu, de fato, acho que é interessante poder observar, né, o termo feminismo, como ele pode ser acompanhado historicamente em seus diferentes momentos de manifestação. Mas, ao mesmo tempo, a gente precisa lembrar que essa é uma palavra, e dentro dela não cabe tudo, né? Então, a gente estava falando aqui dessa necessidade de observar a interseccionalidade, como a questão feminina, as questões de gênero, as questões raciais precisam se encontrar, né, e se ver questionadas de um modo articulado. Então, ao fazer isso, quando nós pensamos na história das mulheres negras, desde sempre vinculadas ao trabalho neste país, e, portanto, quando uma das ondas feministas demanda espaço de trabalho, essa não é a demanda desse segmento da população necessariamente, talvez melhores condições de trabalho, talvez a possibilidade também de não estar no trabalho, de estar em casa e de ter outra qualidade de vivência familiar, etc. Então, o que eu quero dizer é que essa divisão temporal nas ondas, eu não sei exatamente o que essa divisão alcança, né? Quer dizer, essa mulher quilombola, essa mulher negra escravizada, essa mulher trabalhadora, quer dizer, tem calendários diferentes também para se falar dessas insurgências femininas, né? Me parece.
Obrigada.
The problem with the wave metaphor is it fits very nicely when you want to describe a peer group. and you want to describe a group of women who met in a particular place who tend to be of similar age or tend to be identified as a group. And as soon as you start looking across all the different versions of feminisms, it falls apart very quickly, because actually one of the things that feminism has been quite determined to do is to promote transgenerational perspectives and try and link up the present with different pasts, and try and link up the relationships between past struggles into present struggles. So, for example, 1918 is not just the end of the First World War in Britain, but they're going through a wave of celebrating the first women who were allowed to vote. Yes, you had to be over 28 and have a property qualification to get that opportunity to vote, but nevertheless, it was the first time that women could vote. So we will have a bigger celebration in 2028 when all women the same age as men could get the vote.
Bom, acho que essa discussão, eu vou fazer uma última pergunta, que também é para todas, eu acho que é um pouco também oportuno um pouco uma continuação dessa pergunta, que em um momento em que vemos o avanço de movimentos de extrema-direita no mundo inteiro e de uma repressão grande, há vários movimentos que nascem calcados na identidade, e eu gostaria de saber de vocês que estratégias de enfrentamento político e também artístico, que envolva questões políticas, os movimentos feministas podem oferecer.
That is a super tough question. And whoever asked that question...
Você pode falar de
Yeah, okay. Well, I would actually ask the question whether it really is identity politics that's under question, because a lot of feminists don't support identity politics. So the question is really whether it's feminism. I mean, we know what the right-wing rhetoric is. We know that the right-wing rhetoric is against the idea of the liberated woman, who is economically independent and works and, makes her own choices as to when and how she will have a family. But the real problem is there are certain aspects of identity politics and LGBTQ politics which are being treated as signs of excess or the wrong direction by right-wing rhetoric. And the question is, how do we challenge that right-wing rhetoric, not whether or not we support the identity politics?
Eu fico pensando nessa obra que a gente viu há pouco da Howardina Pindell, em que ela faz esse vídeo e ela aparece como mulher negra e mulher branca ao mesmo tempo, que é uma obra que fala das dificuldades de uma escuta entre agentes sociais, cada um com a sua agenda, não é? Quer dizer, é uma mulher negra e ela, nesse diálogo, é como se essa mulher branca que está ali representada, ela é um pouco um símbolo de uma mulher feminista também, artista, querendo ocupar seus espaços, mas nesse conjunto da obra, o que fica claro é que há uma espécie de surdez, há uma espécie de filme, né, que envolve cada um desses agentes sociais e que tira um pouco a sensibilidade e a escuta para dar conta do que é essa experiência do outro, que eu não preciso nunca saber por completo como é, porque nunca serei esse outro, e se falou aqui de manhã das possibilidades de empatia, né, dessa possibilidade de uma busca de compreensão do que é a experiência do outro. Então, me parece que esse momento que a gente está vivendo pede isso, né? Pede isso, pede um reconhecimento das pessoas, todos nós, das nossas limitações de compreensão sobre a experiência de outrem, daquele que é diferente de mim, que vem de outras histórias, né? Mas, ao mesmo tempo, que eu consiga me colocar num posicionamento em que eu estou aberto ao que ele manifesta ser esta experiência, né? E que a gente possa, então, ter um exercício que é da soma, da combinação, da associação, né, pautada por aquilo que são os valores, que nós queremos que sejam os dados de permanência através do tempo, né, e dos governos, e dos momentos de crise, etc., que a gente possa carregar esses valores através desse arco de tempo em conjunto, né, desenvolvendo e fortalecendo essas nossas capacidades de nos enxergarmos, né, de nos associarmos também, me parece.
I think I will answer from the local and situated perspective of the place where I live. So I live in Vienna, Austria, and the right wing there acts as if they were an excluded minority. And of course they are in power, but they embrace all the strategies that have been the strategies of the left. So when there's a public discussion, they would call the museum and they would say, oh, we have to sit up on the podium as well because you cannot exclude us. So I think one has to work against something like this. I just want to maybe give one example. So both in Germany and in Austria, a lot of the election campaign was based on anti-immigration and xenophobia. And when there were attacks on women's bodies by immigrants and by people who were asylum seekers, these women who had been attacked actually spoke up that these attacks should not be turned into anti-racism, that they should not be used as something to make it useful for a political currency that builds on a racist reality and rhetorics. So that's one thing I wanted to share with you. The second thing is that a lot of the right-wing politics that I witnessed locally pretends to be based on simplicity and what we call post-fact or post-truth. And so even though it's difficult, I would argue for complexity and for not giving up on something that we might want to call truth. And I think it's hard to argue for that, but especially when one is part of the generation I grew up with that was very much concerned with debating that every fact is actually constructed. But I think we cannot give up on facts. And the last thing I wanted to say is there's a lot of reason for political depression, but I think we cannot all be depressed. We have to tell ourselves that it's important to not give up and to not give up on hope, that there will be an other moment that will not be a right-wing moment.
Obrigada. Obrigada pelas falas, pela presença, por todas as perguntas. Infelizmente não consegui fazer todas, mas a gente está por aqui, pode conversar mais. E eu gostaria de convidá-los também para ficar às 4h30. Nós teremos uma mesa com a Jude Chicago e a Maura Riley, e vai das 4h30 até às 6h. Então, quem estiver aqui e tiver interesse, puder ficar, vocês são muito bem-vindos. Obrigada.